All right, let's dive right into this dark fable. To really unpack the philosophical weight of today's source text, I'm going to guide you through this explainer by, well, actually stepping into the shoes of its antagonist. I'm adopting the persona of the Pale Inquisitor, so welcome to my domain. A silent, gray kingdom locked in a perpetual cold twilight. If you're picturing it, imagine a world completely defined by high contrast lighting and sharp shadow play, where literally every corner hides this subdued, obedient silence. The great sun of shared cultural myth? Yeah, that's set a long time ago here, leaving behind a beautifully ordered void. As we walk through this text together, I want you to really feel the chill of this perfect, static world, because it's only against this super bleak canvas that the true power of individual agency makes any sense at all.
Now look at the subjects trapped in this kingdom. In my world, the people are entirely predictable. They are, as the text calls them, orphans of meaning, but they are comfortable. These are the sleepers, basically the ultimate manifestation of the last man archetype. We're talking about individuals who looked at the terrifying, chaotic vastness of human potential and gladly traded their high ambition and agonizing struggles for just shallow security. They exist in a state of perfectly managed observation, trapped behind these thick, pristine glass walls. They can see out, sure, but they are entirely insulated from the actual friction of reality. They've completely given up the right to write their own stories, preferring to just be safely filed away in my immaculate archives.
And where do these sleepers live? They're housed inside what the source describes as the architecture of stasis. This is a state-provided existence, structurally reinforced by a comforting cage of endless repeating slogans. No high ambition, no struggle, just the absolute control of a perfectly still society. Imagine the scene for a second. I sit at my massive, cold stone desk, its surface incredibly dull and unforgiving, and I rule over an unquestioning populace resting in what we call unqualified repose, which basically means they never challenge anything, never question. They just exist in a permanent, docile rest. Honestly, it's a masterpiece of bureaucratic engineering. The dull stone of this architecture absorbs all warmth, all erratic human energy, and converts it into a smooth, frictionless compliance.
Let's break down the exact transaction of this dystopia because it's fascinating. From my cold stone desk, I meticulously tally the ledger of sacrifices. On one side, you have the exact amount of humanity and individual meaning surrendered by the sleepers. On the other side, the shallow security they gained from the state machine. They literally traded high ambition for a cage of slogans. And the craziest part is, it was a totally voluntary surrender. A beautiful exchange of chaotic potential for the dull stone certainty of my ledgers. It was perfect. Just a flawless mathematical equilibrium. Until, of course, the anomaly hit.
It was an inciting incident that my character can only describe with total aristocratic disdain. A catastrophic logic collapse that the texts refer to simply as the spill. Think of it like a massive glitch in reality, where the fundamental rules of our society just abruptly stopped working. The perfect equilibrium of my stone kingdom suddenly cracked, and stepping right through that crack, directly into the center of the town square, came the last thinker. From the high intersections of time, the architect of Inkblot and I watched this traveler incredibly closely. We expected sheer panic, right? We expected them to desperately grasp at the edges of our state-provided reality as the world around them began bleeding into unpredictable chaos.
But the thinker? No way! They did absolutely nothing of the sort. And this is where the explainer gets really interesting. Instead of reaching for the dead institutional beacons of the past, the state-approved maps and mythologies we so graciously provided, the thinker completely ignored our failed systems. They just sat there, entirely unbothered in what we call the ultimate stain, which is basically the messy, unscripted center of this newfound chaos. And right there in the town square, completely surrounded by the collapse of our logic, they started crafting entirely personal symbols. They pulled from this unknown, internal potential, totally bypassing our entire infrastructure of meaning. Honestly, the audacity of it is just staggering. This builder took the actual wreckage of our perfectly ordered world, the shattered glass, the broken stone, the sheer debris of the spill, and used it as the foundational blocks for a radical new mindset. They started constructing, as you can see quoted from the text, a temple made of one's own struggle. This wasn't some prepackaged temple handed down by a committee or sanctioned by my ledger. No, it was built piece by jagged piece by a lone individual who flat out refused to be crushed by the void.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that his work generated a reaction I hadn't calculated for at all. It generated a vibrant personal light. This inner certainty radiated outward, like a blinding, chaotic warmth that stood in incredibly violent contrast to the dull gray stone of my world.
The sharp shadow play of our Twilight Kingdom was just suddenly ruined by this glowing beacon of individual agency. And worst of all, this light didn't just stay neatly contained in the square. It violently pierced the thick glass walls of the sleepers, bleeding straight into their sterile chambers and completely shattering their unquestioning slumber.
For the sleepers, this light brought pure, unfiltered psychological dread. Imagine the intense internal monologue of someone waking up from a lifelong, heavily medicated sleep. Their minds are reeling, right? They're thinking, wait, what is this ache in my chest? Why does this bright light hurt so much? I was safe in the dark, I was secure, but now, I remember wanting something more. It was the sudden, terrifying itch of a dream they'd long been forced to forget. As the Inquisitor, witnessing their sudden awakening physically pained my perfectly ordered world. I literally wanted to scream at them to look away, to shut their eyes, to just go back to the comfort of the slogans. I desperately tried to enforce the shadows, to block out this agonizingly vibrant light.
But, the cat was out of the bag. The realization had taken root. And here is the truly terrifying part of the text. The light from the Thinker's Temple exposed our kingdom for exactly what it was. The sleepers realized that their state-provided safety wasn't a sanctuary at all. It was a cage. The whole modern pretense of our society was merely a shield for dark gods, meaning institutions that coldly demanded the sacrifice of their creative spirits just to maintain the status quo. Their internal dread quickly shifted into a horrified clarity. The ledger wasn't protecting them, it was feeding on their potential.
I had to stop it. I leaned over my cold stone desk, sneering directly into the microphone of the state apparatus, and launched a campaign of absolute psychological warfare. I broadcasted straight into their chambers, trying to force the Thinker and the awakening sleepers back into submission using the terrifying reality of the void. The old gods have retreated, I warned them. The maps you once followed are now useless smears of ink. There's absolutely nothing out there to guide you. Will the immense suffocating weight of this total isolation not crush you into dust?
But here's the twist. The isolation didn't crush them. In a brilliant counterattack, the Thinker embraced amor fati, which is the love of one's fate. They outlined a totally new path for survival. First, affirm the beautifully ruined landscape. Don't mourn the lost stasis. Second, accept that the old foundation is in flight. There is no solid ground left to stand on, and that's okay. And third, the most dangerous idea of all. When the foundation is completely gone, you have to become the frame yourself. It was a complete philosophical checkmate against my ledger.
And this right here is where the philosophy builds into pure, unadulterated panic for my character, the Inquisitor, because the Thinker's mindset took hold. The sleepers, bathed in that vibrant personal light, actually started looking at their own hands, realizing the dormant power they held all along. They saw that their scheduled, perfectly managed lives were nothing but a cage. Stepping out from behind their shattered glass walls, they rejected the state's security entirely. They started forging the honest currency of the spirit, mining the very wreckage of my kingdom to build their own meaning.
At this point, as the Inquisitor, I just have to concede total defeat. The wet parchment of our meticulously managed reality finally settled into its new, unpredictable form, permanently dissolving my rigid laws and stone ledgers into just meaningless smears. The last Thinker had become the absolute master of his narrative. We had entered a new horizon of chaos. But the great irony of it all, it was no longer viewed as a tragedy. For the Awakened, it was a surreal playhouse, a vibrant, chaotic landscape where their self-built temples of struggle rose infinitely higher than the dull spires of my old world ever could.
So my kingdom of Twilight is gone. It's been entirely overwritten. I'm left with nothing but this final, vibrating truth echoing through the empty halls of my stasis. The myth is no longer shared. It is authored. In a world where institutional guidance has completely collapsed and the ledgers have burned to ash, the individual remains the sole architect of meaning. So as I step out of character and fade back into the sharp shadows, I want to leave you with this one final terrifying and beautiful question to take away from this explainer. Now that the glass walls are broken and the foundation is in flight, what temple will you author in the wreckage?